So I want to talk a bit about these insidious culture wars that are happening with our system because it's very intricate and it's sometimes hard to express what's really going on, especially when it's so marred with deep levels of psychological warfare and high level psyops, just high level military intelligence planting these seeds and these divisions and these agendas within the populace. So this war between left and right, everything that's happening in life can be thought of as a reflection, right, of what's going on in the internal system and the internal universe. So that's a really important key to realize in the evolution of yourself, because everything that is reflected in your external world is also reflected in your internal world. So when we think about right and left, that's why I say I don't give up one wing or the other. I'm not right wing or left wing because I use both wings to fly. A bird can't fly without both wings. So everyone's trying to fly with one wing, going at war with the other wing. It really doesn't work. It's like the masculine being at war with the feminine. It just makes no sense. It's like my right hand at war with my left hand. Like, these concepts exist in balance, in harmony, in nature. So it's like saying, like the night is at war with the day. No, we need the night and the day. Like, it doesn't make sense. Or like winter is at war with the summer. No, they're part of the balance of the whole, and we need the masculine and the feminine. So when we have these culture wars, the entire earth is one organism, right? So we are all actually extensions of the earth. In a lot of indigenous languages, there's actually no distinction between the word for body and the word for soil and the word for earth, because we're actually part of the earth. Our bodies, we're basically renting our bodies from the earth, so to speak. We're part of the earth. We are one with the earth. The earth, we're part of this ecosystem of the organism that is earth. So everything that happens on the earth is part of us. Every race on earth is part of us. We are one organism. So when the left is at war with the right and this is at war with that, we're really just at war with parts of ourselves. So what is fueling this division? That's a deeper topic. But what I really want to talk about is how our real emotions are utilized and then taken into these agendas, and then we are taught to believe that the other side is what is causing our problems. So this scapegoating tactic, for instance, and it happens on both the right and the left with Democrats and Republicans, and that's why I feel it's so important to maintain your independent thought, because both Democrats and Republicans have all the characteristics of a cult. They have groupthink, they have hypocrisy, they have inability to question, they have, just following the, like, blue no matter who, whatever, so basically it's an excuse to not have to think. And I've thought this ever since I was a child, actually. I always thought, it seems like voting for someone just because they're in a political party is kind of like an excuse not to think, not to have to use your brain. And a lot of people are very busy, so it is easier when you have a lot of people on the ballot and you have to research every single person, like for all of the offices, and it does take work to do that amount of research. It's easier to just be like, oh, I'm a Republican, let me just vote for all the Republicans, or I'm a Democrat, let me just vote for all the Democrats. So like if you want to be lazy, then yeah, that's the way. But if you want to actually be free, it's not the way. Another thing I want to talk about is, and I'm going to try to express this in the best way possible, but for instance, all these social issues, they always come from truth, and they always come from a real problem that's happening, and then they're taken by literally psychopathic elites, and that energy is utilized and taken into a different agenda that they are trying to accomplish, that they are sort of wearing this costume in order to accomplish this end. So how do I explain this? It's like, so, okay, prime example, and I'm experiencing fear just before even talking about this, because as a white person, I'm not allowed to talk about this, which is part of the groupthink censorship agenda of this system, which I'm about to describe. But for instance, Black Lives Matter is coming from a deeply important movement and sentiment of years of systemic racism. There has been a deep sabotage of the Black community, obviously ever since slavery and then Jim Crow and, the mass incarceration, which was actually done by the Democrats, by Clinton and Biden, and Hillary Clinton were behind the crime bill that caused a lot of mass incarceration. Fun fact. But that doesn't mean Republicans aren't also guilty of all this bullshit as well. But anyways, so like there's a real problem, right? So we have a real problem, and we have people heartbroken, struggling, angry at this problem, right? But then your energy, your traumas, and they're so good at using your traumas. These psychopaths who have these very high level psychological operations, they're just so good at using your traumas. They know exactly how to use your traumas, and they use all of our traumas. So just bearing that in mind. So they'll take this and they will start infiltrating this movement. They'll start positioning themselves as the leaders of the movement. So for instance, Black Lives Matter as an organization is funded by George Soros. And George Soros is a psychopathic elite. Like, that man could not give a single shit about black people. That man does not give a fuck about anybody. And he's funding Black Lives Matter. So why? Through the Open Society Foundation, which has a specific agenda. And I won't necessarily go into all of the tenets of that agenda. But that's one instance. That's a huge, deep topic to go into. So here we have the left, virtue signaling, and a lot of these people are white, well-off people with high-level academic backgrounds, and they just want to achieve all of the tenets of the assignment of the rubric of this woke culture. So they want to appear as if they have, all of these virtues aligned. But coincidentally, like, you can never be woke enough for the woke culture, especially as a white person. Like, and I was deep in woke culture, and I was actually like speaking out about Black Lives Matter since 2016, and I was like really into it. And I did learn a lot from that as to like dismantling the systems within me. But so what was I saying? Okay. So, okay, people's traumas and their good intentions being used against them it's happening in all these movements, and I want you to understand that no movement is necessarily immune from this infiltration. It's an opportunity for discernment. Even the anti-war movement of the 60s was actually engineered through military psychological operation. Van Morrison's dad, I forget his exact name, but he's a major high up in the military in psychological operations. He even was there at the attack that basically started the Vietnam War, which was essentially a psyop. Like, the Vietnamese weren't actually shooting at the ships. So anyways, Gulf of Tonkin, I believe, is what it was. And Frank Zappa's dad is in intelligence as well. So, you know, everything is not what it seems, sadly. And okay, so, and then even the spiritual movements now have a lot of infiltration. There are a lot of shamans who are connected with the CIA and connected with dark magic, dark cults and agendas that present as light, just like the Catholic Church. Christianity got infiltrated. The Catholic Church is like the center of this all. Every single religion got infiltrated and taken over by these dark elites. They're like the spiders in the shadows. They'll take things over and use all kinds of tricks to pretend like they have your best interest at heart. They'll get you riled up, and then they'll tell you a bunch of true things about what you've been experiencing, and they'll be like, okay, now do this, or like, this is why, so now be mad at this. And that's how they control you. So the war between left and right, here's what I'm trying to get at, and it's kind of hard to describe, but because of these advanced psychological operations, we find ourselves not really communicating with one another accurately, and I guess because we've been trained to view the other as the cause of our problems, then it does hinder us from having true debate and true connection and understanding. So, for instance, the right, and I'm kind of more connected to the right now than I used to be, although I don't consider myself on the right either. I don't support Trump. That's another topic that I'm not going to get into right now. But, you know, Q is a psyop. Anyways, that's another topic. But so many psyops, so much psychological warfare. But anyways, the right and the left not hearing each other because of these psychological operations and because of the brainwashing over years. And part of it is because of the different demographics of what really constitutes the core of the left and the core of the right. So the left is more like in these urban places, and the right is in these rural places. So there's just a different culture at play there, and they have different problems, different things that are present for them in those locations, in that culture. And a really key thing is like, repetition is a really good way to indoctrinate someone. So when someone is watching the news, which is pure psychological warfare propaganda for the most part, Operation Mockingbird, look into it. But when you watch the news for more hours than you speak to humans of differing viewpoints and differing political parties than yourself about these topics, then it's like the CIA and the government, through their propaganda arm of these news organizations, they are in your home, and they are your community more than your physical community is your community. So it's like they come into your home with this, and they get into your head, and so you are closer to the propaganda coming from that entity than you are to your fellow man, to your fellow human beings. And that's how they do it, because they're able to get into people's homes, into people's brains with this. When my grandparents were growing up in fascist Sicily under Mussolini, they had one radio station, and they would all gather in the square to listen to Mussolini talk. So it's like that. I mean, now we have more of the illusion of choice in terms of the networks, because, okay, Viacom CBS is now one company, so like everything under that umbrella is one company. There's Fox, there are just a few media companies, right? And these journalists don't want to they don't bite the hand that feeds them. They just do what they're told. They're not real journalists. Anyways, and they're advertising for Pfizer and everybody in the commercials, and they have to kowtow to that. So, the government, the state is in your house talking to you, and you're listening to them more than you're actually talking to your fellow man. Like, you're just accepting these straw man arguments about what the other side is like. Oh, they're just, white supremacist, Trump supporting, whatever you think about right-wing people. And then if you were actually to talk to somebody who's just like, and I'm not saying all right-wing people are like on farms, I'm not saying that, but like, let's say like somebody on a farm and he's just like chilling out, like doing his thing, like he has some guns and he believes in the Constitution, and like, maybe he's a cool guy, like you don't know, you've never talked to him, you don't know why he thinks this or that, like you're just judging him based on, psychological warfare tactics that are being aimed at you. And never should somebody be called white supremacist unless they are actually white supremacists. Like the amount of hyperbole is wild. Like, a white supremacist is somebody who believes that white people are inherently better than other races. Unless somebody says that and like spouts those beliefs that they actually believe that, they're not a white supremacist. Like, if somebody says, hey, like, I think white people, are going through this, or they're being, targeted by woke culture or something, that doesn't make them a white supremacist. They're seeing it from a different perspective. And if you're unwilling to even listen to what they have to say, then you're actually being prejudiced against them. You're not actually willing to like sit with somebody and actually talk to a human being, but you would rather talk to this straw man that you have of them in their mind, that somebody else, a psychopath, painted for you, so that you could be separated from your fellow man, so that we don't rise up against this fucking 0.01% of assholes that are in charge of all this bullshit. So I may or may not post this, but that was my rant for today.